Good morning, everyone. Your morning weather briefing for this Thursday, June 14th, finds that there are no major changes in my own forecast versus what I presented yesterday. Looking at temperature and rainfall outlooks, again, I think that the big story right now is the intense heat that is going to be seen in the middle of the country, starting in far western portions of the Corn Belt for today and then moving across the bulk of the Corn Belt for tomorrow through the weekend. Still very hot on Monday before we see some moderating temperatures after that. In general, I would call my 11 to 15 day temperature forecast as trending a little bit cooler than yesterday. 6 to 10 and 11 to 15 day forecast continue to feature some rainfall chances, maybe a slight tendency for my 11 to 15 day rainfall forecast to be a little bit wetter than the past couple of days. Looking at the QPF discussion for the 1 to 5 day time frame, I have no major disagreements versus what is shown here. Only southeastern portion of the Corn Belt will not have a rainfall threat in the near term, but obviously the vast majority of the rain that is going to be seen in the Corn Belt is going to be in the far north and far northwest, where they will have excellent chances for significant or even heavy rainfall due to ring of fire activity that will be getting going there, especially for the Sunday-Monday time frame. A hard red winter wheat belt looking at largely dry conditions the next 4 days before they see some rainfall there on Monday. Afternoon and evening shower and thunderstorm activity on a daily basis accounts for the rain shown in the mid-south and the southeast. For the day 6 to 7 time frame, the ridge of high pressure that is going to be keeping rainfall chances at a minimum across a big portion of the Corn Belt for the coming weekend period will be breaking down for the middle of next week, and thus we will be seeing a return at rainfall during that time frame. This map in particular would be based mainly off of the European model. I would consider it as not much more than a guess. Probably we will see rainfall coverage be less, rainfall amounts be better than this map shows in the Corn Belt. I do not have any disagreement, though, with the extensive and very nice rains that are shown in this period for the hard red winter wheat belt. Afternoon high temperatures yesterday in the Corn Belt, certainly one of the milder days that we have seen in quite a number of days, and certainly the mildest day that the Corn Belt will see for the next several days as well. You can see that 90-degree heat largely absent from the Corn Belt during that time frame, 90 and even 100-plus degree heat again seen in the southern plains and in portions of the mid-south. Obviously a sign of things to come, and that heat, of course, will be expanding northeastward. Rainfall totals through 1 o'clock this morning. Scattered areas of rain once again across the Corn Belt during the last 24 hours. You can see that on radar estimated rainfall this morning, still some rain in southeastern portions of the region and also some rain in northwestern portions of the Corn Belt as well. And the rain that is shown there is rain that is still ongoing here this morning. You can see on the radar that scattered shower and thunderstorm activity is being seen this morning across a decent portion of Iowa. Again, pretty scattered in nature, but places that are getting under some of the better rains are seeing some fairly significant rainfall totals. Don't be surprised if you hear a rumble of thunder at some point during this recording this morning, as we are getting some rainfall activity right now in the Des Moines area. The rain that we are seeing in the radar this morning is going to be dying off by later on this morning, and it will be dry across the Corn Belt for this afternoon and this evening. But as we get towards tomorrow morning, the arrival of warmer air in the region is once again going to be breaking out some thunderstorm activity for late tonight, especially for areas just to the east of the Mississippi River by around this time tomorrow morning. As we get towards the 7 o'clock in the morning time frame on Sunday, that is when the ridge of high pressure is really taking control of the Corn Belt at that time. So most of the Corn Belt and areas to the south of there at that time looking at no rainfall at all. But again, this is classic ring of fire rainfall pattern. Note that the rainfall developing around that ridge of high pressure across the Rockies and especially across the northern plains and into the northwestern Corn Belt, where rainfall at that time could be significant or even heavy in nature with some severe weather likely. By the time we get to the middle of next week, though, the ridge of high pressure will be breaking down, and with that being the case, rainfall will be returning to the Corn Belt at that time, as can be seen by the European model, the Canadian model, and also the European ensemble. GFS would have the rainfall mainly to the south of the Corn Belt at that time, largely disagreeing with that forecast at this time, looking more towards the European, Canadian, and European ensembles with my forecast. So again, looking at 10-day rainfall forecast this morning, again emphasizing I do not want anyone to believe the details of these rainfall forecasts. I'm not going to be making a big deal this morning out of the fact that the European model is suggesting a fairly good rains or even heavy rains across the Corn Belt, just like I did not make a big deal out of the European model yesterday suggesting a fairly limited 10-day rainfall forecast for the Corn Belt. Again, you cannot believe the specifics of these rainfall forecasts. I'm presenting them, though, just to show you that there are rainfall chances in the 10-day forecast all across the middle of the country. Likely going to be a typical summertime thunderstorm situation, one where areas that get significant or even heavy rainfall are very close by to areas that, due to luck or circumstances, do not get nearly as much rainfall. As there you probably saw or heard a fairly big thunderstorm clap in the background, even took the power out here for just a moment. Getting back to the matter at hand, though, if you're talking about the areas of the Corn Belt that I would favor for the biggest rainfall, it would be South Dakota, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. A lot of that rainfall occurring during this coming weekend period. The area that would probably most disfavor for rainfall in the Corn Belt for the next 10 days, probably portions of Illinois and Missouri. As far as the temperature forecast is concerned, again, I think that the big story in the forecast is the type of heat and humidity that is going to be seen across a big portion of the middle of the country. Again, that heat getting into western portions of the Corn Belt for today, then spreading across a bigger portion of the Corn Belt for tomorrow. All across the Corn Belt for the weekend, notice the extensive area of 90 to 95 plus degree heat, even some localized areas of 100-degree heat as we get towards Saturday. A very similar temperature forecast for Sunday. Starting to see a little bit of cooling in the far northwestern Corn Belt on Monday, more cooling in the Corn Belt for Tuesday, and then only far southeastern portion of the Corn Belt not seeing cooling by the time we get to Wednesday. Why is it going to be hot in the near term? Obviously due to a very strong ridge of high pressure that is going to be dominating the eastern portion of the country aloft by the time we get to the weekend. Notice the well above normal heights and 588 heights getting into a big portion of the Corn Belt by that time. It is still looking to be a brief warm-up, though, by the time we get to late in the day on June 22nd. Note that the ridge of high pressure and any higher than normal heights aloft have been confined to mainly northwestern portion of the nation by that time, and a trough of low pressure ushering in some cooler weather into central and eastern portion of the Corn Belt by that time. Longer term, again, as I noted in the beginning, I think that the temperature forecast for the 11 to 15 day period is trending a little bit cooler today. Note that at the very end of the 11 to 15 day time frame, any ridge of high pressure on today's maps more towards far western portions of the nation and also into northeastern portions of the nation, something that's into some agreement this morning from all of the various models, somewhat of a trough of low pressure in some central and western portions of the nation. Again, not your coolest weather pattern that you've ever seen, but again, maybe not quite as warm as we have seen from maps of recent days. And again, that's a pattern as well that I would think that rainfall chances would not be shut off across the Corn Belt, and very well could be a weather pattern that turns out to be wetter than the models actually suggest at this time. Internationally this morning, no changes in Brazil. Dryness in the northern Safrinha corn areas. Some modest rains the next 2 weeks in the south. Over in Europe, good rains going to be seen in southeastern sections of Europe for the next 2 weeks. Otherwise, below normal rainfall across the rest of Europe. Winter grain and summer row crop areas of the former Soviet Union looking at mostly below normal rainfall for the next 2 weeks. The better rains that you do see there for western Ukraine into Belarus and into some portions of central district. All of that rainfall largely occurring during the next 2 to 3 days before even those areas, as well as the rest of the region, looks at mostly dry weather for the rest of the 10-day forecast, and below normal rainfall going to be seen for the 11 to 15 day time frame as well. Spring grain areas of the former Soviet Union still looking at extensive rainfall during the next 10 days, with temperatures still running mostly below normal. Still a wet pattern for the next 2 weeks for the corn and soybean areas of Manchuria. Very nice rains throughout the 1 to 5, 6 to 10, and 11 to 15 day time frames. Still see the forecast trending wetter all the time for the North China Plain, though note that most of that rainfall will be occurring during the second week of the 2-week time frame. In Canada, some modest rain is going to be seen in the Canadian prairies for the next 2 days, but otherwise this is a dry 10-day forecast for the Canadian prairies, with temperatures going back above normal in the Canadian prairies for the 6 to 10 day period. In Australia, still clearly not the wet pattern that is needed there, and note that most of the rain that is shown for especially some of the southeastern growing areas is going to be occurring in the near term. Widespread below normal rainfall in Australian wheat areas for the 6 to 10 and 11 to 15 day time frames. Wrapping things up for this morning, no changes in India. Still a very weak monsoon for week 1. Better monsoon, but still not an especially active monsoon for week 2 timeframes, with the better rains favoring southern portions of the Indian subcontinent. That's what I have for this Thursday. Everyone have themselves a great day.